Hey there, Joe Brunsman, insurance broker to the stars. Today we're going to be talking about the Jm Bullion Breach. And TechRadar has posed the question, is this the most expensive breach ever? Well, let's go ahead and jump into it and kind of figure some of this out and look at some of the nuances. All right, so what actually happened here? Well, Jm Bullion, they sell precious metals. You'll see their gold, silver, copper, platinum, palladium. And they became the victim of a cyber attack in February, did not discover it until July, and it looks like they are just putting out breach notification letters here. It remains unclear why the hack is only just being disclosed publicly. So two things you really need to consider here as a business owner. One, it does take quite a bit of time, sometimes a shocking amount of time, between the date a breach is occurring and the date that that breach is actually discovered. So really kind of a couple things here. One, don't be shocked when it takes a while to figure that out. And two, you need to make sure that you have backups for long enough that you are not unfortunately backing up to something that has malicious code in it. So make sure you take that seriously. Next, the reason it's only just now being publicly disclosed, as a business owner, at least have a passing familiarity at a minimum with your own state's breach notification laws. A lot of those laws have some provision in there that you can postpone notification dealing with law enforcement or national security organizations. So make sure you understand that specific provision. Moving on here, it was determined that malicious code was present on the website from February 18th to July 17th of 2020, which had the ability to capture customer information entered into the website in limited scenarios while making a purchase. I did some digging here. I could not figure out what that limited scenario is, but what this sounds like is something called a Mage Cart attack. And if you're doing any sort of e-commerce, you probably need to know what a Mage Cart attack is. Further, although there have been no reports of malicious activity stemming from the hack as of yet, Jm Bullion did post sales. They make about $375 million a year, so not a small company. If cyber attackers use ill-gotten credentials to conduct fraudulent activity, it could end up being a, we'll say, very costly data breach for the company as consumers. Sorry about that typo there from TechRadar. What they're really getting into here is something called PCI DSS, Fines, Penalties, and Assessments. That's the Payment Card Industry Data Security Standards. So if you've ever had your payment card, that could be a credit card, debit card, etc. If you ever had that compromised, you get a notification after it gets shut off, you get a card shipped to you the next day. Well, one, someone's paying for that card to be created and printed. Two, someone is paying for the, say, generally overnight shipping on that card. And three, someone is paying for those fraudulent charges, and that's where PCI DSS comes into play. So you do not want your business paying for those very, very potentially costly items. So keep that in mind. Let's talk about Mage Cart real quick. So it's been around since about 2016. It is a consortium of criminals, and they target online shopping cart systems. What it does is essentially when you enter information onto, let's say, a secure or supposedly secure website somewhere, it's actually skimming the information when you're putting your credit card information on the box. So when you say go to Amazon and you have to enter in your credit card information, the idea is it would try and skim that information and send it somewhere else, ostensibly back to the criminals, so they could then sell that information online or actually use it for their own nefarious purposes. Mage Cart is not the only organization doing this. If you want to take a deep dive into this particular idea, you can obviously do a quick internet search for Mage Cart and find all types of horrendous stories. You can also search for the term supply chain attack, so you can see all the other different types of variants that are out there. Now, one thing that I think every business really needs to be aware of that I don't think they've really, probably taken on board yet is I did a quick internet search for Jm Bullion. So you'll see the top item there. It looks like they're paying for their own name on Google AdWords. Probably a waste of money there. Number two is their own website. And then underneath that, you're going to see acknowledges breach, Mage Cart attack, customer payment data stolen. One of the things that's just very hard to quantify is, okay, what number of customers would have come to Jm Bullion that now will see this on an internet search and they're going to go, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm not going to deal with these guys. Let me just do a search for competitors to Jm Bullion or alternatives to Jm Bullion. That could potentially end up costing them more money than the actual breach itself. Very, very hard to quantify there. So that's something that your business just doesn't want to contend with. That is a bear you don't want to poke. All right, we're up to about 5 minutes here. Let's go ahead and jump into lessons learned. As I said before, it does take a while to discover a breach, so make sure you understand what those implications could be. At the very least, consider what your backup periodicity is and how long you're actually keeping those backups. Also, make sure you look up the 3-2-1 rule. Next, understand PCI, fines, penalties, and assessments. Those can get very, very large. So for example, let's say my credit card gets stolen and there's $10,000 of fraudulent purchases on that credit card. They just get whatever that stuff is. There's no way to claw that money back. Well, someone's paying for that $10,000. It's probably not going to be me because I have consumer fraud protections. It's probably not going to be the bank. They're going to try and figure out where that breach actually came from, and they're going to go back and probably hammer that particular business and make them pay for all those other associated fees. There's also, various assessments and penalties that come down from the PCI DSS Council. What those are really varies. I think it kind of varies on a case-to-case basis, but I think generally that's really kind of hidden information. We've only seen a few indications from that, but in the court documents, but suffice to say, it is not a small amount. Next, make sure you understand that law enforcement delay, at the very least in your own state's breach notification statute. If you're doing any sort of online commerce as a business, please consider vetting the code for that shopping cart. It can be a very tedious process. It's not going to be fun. In some circumstances, it's just a line-by-line comparison that they have to go down to see if there's any issue there. But suffice to say, it could end up saving you, not only a ton of money, but also some very, very bad publicity that you probably don't want to have coming your way. Next, make sure you check that merchant services agreement, specifically as it deals with PCI DSS, so you understand what your own particular legal obligations are. I think a lot of businesses probably need an attorney to assist with that. Next big point here. Now is the time to assess your risk. If you've been putting any of this stuff off, if you're saying, hey, this isn't going to happen to me, or who would come after me, I just want to dispel that myth entirely. They will come after you. They will hammer you. So make sure you do it. Like a true legitimate risk assessment, understand what your risks are and take those risks seriously. Rack them and stack them and just start knocking them out one at a time if you have to. Whatever you can do to make yourself a harder target, that's going to make you less palatable to cyber criminals. Generally, they're going to go for that low-hanging fruit. So you don't want to be that guy. Do not poke the bear. Next, assess your own particular cyber insurance policy. I am a cyber insurance guy as well as an E&O guy. So make sure you actually understand what is in your cyber policy. Just because it says you have coverage for PCI DSS, that does not mean that you have coverage for all the particular components involved with PCI DSS. And that's just one example. Every single cyber policy is different. There is no standard language. So make sure if you're doing any sort of online payments, you're doing any sort of online commerce, you got to make sure that you really understand if you're insured for this type of incident or not. Finally, if you deal with PCI DSS, it can't hurt to really consider reaching out to a PCI DSS compliance expert to make sure that you're not running afoul of any other issues there. So the last thing you want to do is deal with a breach, and now, hey, all of a sudden, PCI DSS comes in, and it turns out you were doing a whole bunch of stuff wrong, and now there's other potential dollar figures that could be rolling downhill quickly and coming your way. Not something you want to deal with. Finally, I will say this. This is just one type of breach that can occur. Just one example of. There are thousands of other ways your business could get breached. So even if you're not dealing with online commerce and you just love hearing me talk, which is why you're still hanging around, make sure you're taking that cybersecurity seriously. That means reaching out to your MSP or your MSSP, talking with your IT guys, figuring out, okay, what are our particular risks? How do we fill those holes? How do we make ourselves a harder target? You don't have to spend half of your yearly revenue on cybersecurity necessarily, but you do need to have those reasonable cybersecurity controls in place. You want to make sure that you're taking that risk appropriately and not putting your business in undue risk. All right, with that, this is Damage Control Cyber Insurance Compliance, 500 pages of probably everything you wanted to know, plus some. That is the link where you can download it for free. With that, like, share, comment, and subscribe. Let me know if I missed anything. Let me know if I'm way off base here. And with that, stay safe.